Hi everyone! Today I'm going to be doing a Valentine set on my daughter. I'm just showing you which bit I'm using here. It's either the 4 or 5 course. Sorry for the blast in with no intro. I need to learn how to make an intro, an exit, and a video as well. I usually do the TikTok, but I guess an intro is pretty important. Anyway, so I had posted on my channel a few days ago that I was going to be doing a backfill on this set I posted. I think it was about almost 3 weeks ago, and this is my daughter, Anna. She works at a restaurant. She didn't have much growth. Her nails didn't grow out very far at all, but she did pop 3 off. The 2 index and ring she just did yesterday, and you can see that she injured and bruised herself. They came off really hard with the car seat. And I don't know how she lost her pinky, but she didn't have any lifting on any of her nails, and the nails that came off weren't lifted either. She literally, hurt herself, ripped them off. So the Kiara Sky Primer is what I used in the last video for these, and it just really, really does the trick. I did notice doing clients, different people, and myself after a time, Young Nails Protein Bond I would use on everyone all the time. And I also got Profix from Profiles Backstage, Triple X Bond from Not Polish, and then the Kiara Sky Acrylic Primer. All of them work really well, but some people, they don't work well on, and some people kind of build a tolerance. Like I used Protein Bond on myself for all my sets, and after a while it stopped working, almost completely. I was getting lifting all the time and not changing my, process, my prep or anything. Anyway, that's just a little tip. Sometimes primer stops working on people and you have to switch it up. So if you're getting lifting on someone you didn't used to, think about changing your primer. So anyway, as you can see here, I am taking down her previous set. I'm saving all the nails. I do have to put 3 new tips on the ones that she popped off, but other than that, her nails held up really, really well. You can see the edges are rounded from wear. And when you get a client coming back in for fills or a backfill, I call this a backfill because that's what V calls it. I'm not sure if that's the technical or pro name for it, but what this is removing as much product as possible to apply a new design on it. So you're not just doing a fill. If I were just doing a fill on this set, I would be just thinning it out, reshaping the edges, doing the cuticle work and filling in her growth and doing all new prep around her cuticle area, but only filling it in the growth with milky white there and leaving the same set and design on. So a backfill is where you do a complete design change but save the nails. So you're not soaking them off, you're not cutting or clipping them off, but you are removing most of the product or as much product as you need to remove to nicely do a new set. So you're going to get rid of the rounded edges, you're going to get rid of all the bulk and the weird shape that happens when nails grow out. Sometimes when you have done this 3 or 4 times, you do need to cut them off and soak off because your apex can become strange, or that's never happened to me. I've heard that, but I really take the product almost all the way down each time, so my apex doesn't become strange because I'm not leaving it there. But you do want to look at your client's nail health anyway, so I would say no more than 3 or 4 times. That's kind of my jam, my rule. So to do this process really quickly, I am using my Melody Susie 2-in-1 lamp and e-file. And I have this on a speed between 15 and 17, even when I'm going on the natural nail and cuticle area. And I don't mean to say on the natural nail, I mean on the acrylic here, where this area where it's her natural nail is underneath, not this part here. So when I have it on 15 to 17, and this is a 4 or 5 course bit, you can see it just shreds. It's just a really, really, really good bit, and it does the work really quickly. So the reason I keep it on that high speed is so it doesn't drag, so it doesn't skip, and so I can barely caress the bit when it gets thin around the skin and on top of the natural nail, I don't have to use any pressure. I can just barely glide it across that area, and I can get close too because it's a safety bit. So if you notice, when I'm above her natural nail here, I'm lifting my bit after every single stroke to make sure I don't generate heat. You'll also see me touch the nail with my thumb lots of times as I'm going. That's because I'm checking for heat. I want to feel if it gets warm before my client tells me it is. So that's what I'm always doing. So here I'm done with the debulking, and now I'm going to reshape the nails because I don't want to start putting acrylic on a misshapen nail. So I want this to appear as if I've just put these tips on and they're the shape I'm going for. So I am squaring up any rounded edges. I'm squaring up her tip, and I do turn her hands around and look from the client's angle, but you can't see that on camera. And then I go over the top of the nail pretty well, because when you're using a really big bit like that, and you can see this from the side view on several of these nails, it has like a wavy effect. There's lumps here and there, and that's because, you know, you're using a machine. You don't have that feel. So when you are able to do this, you can feel what you're doing. I feel like hand filing, I get a way better result and much more control when I hand file. I do lay my acrylic as best as possible to avoid as much filing as possible. I would say for a full set, filing start to finish probably takes me about 30 minutes now. It used to take me, over an hour, just because of just learning things. It's speeding up my time by learning how not to do steps that weren't necessary. And like, for example, when I am filing this set, when it's finished, on the pinky nail, you'll see I barely do anything to it. And that's because it doesn't need anything. I shape up the edges and then I'm done, because I'm going to run the finished bit over it, and it didn't need anything else. So if your nail doesn't need shaping, you literally just can just do around the edges or shape it up a little bit. As I'm going here, and also as I was going with that other bit, I am noticing and paying attention to the acrylic that is closest to her cuticle. Right here, I'm using a cuticle pusher to pull her cuticles away from the acrylic to make sure I expose all the growth. But I'm noticing as I'm going, any of the acrylic that is closest to her cuticle, if any of it looks white, now I know this is a white acrylic, but you'll be able to see what I mean, I think. There's like a white outline around it when you can tell you've got to get that off. You've got to kind of chip it off because there's going to be lifting, and you don't want to apply anything over a lifted product. Now, her nails weren't lifting, but when you take down a set, sometimes you will find little spots that were going to lift. Haven't lifted yet, but they're not completely adhered to the skin. And that you will learn in time as well. I wasn't in as close as I could be, but when I get to her index finger, you'll see it better. So right here, I go in with a Not Polish medium grit sanding band, and on this I am on a speed of 3 or 4. What I do with my e-file, sorry, there's my dog, is hold on, sorry, what I was saying was what I do with my e-file is my Melody Susie lamp e-file that I use doesn't have a digital readout for my speed. It has a dial, so I turn it on, and when I'm doing this step with the sanding band, as soon as I turn it on and it starts spinning, that's where I keep the speed. So it's like 3,000 or 4,000 RPMs. And I'm also pushing back the cuticle a little bit more when I'm using this step, as well as cleaning up any other like shaping that I see. So this is a big bit. If you guys have ever used a mandrel and a sanding band, it's kind of unwieldy. It's kind of bigger than the area you're going in. So it's a kind of a skill you need to learn to use, because it just seems bulky and awkward, but it is really helpful. I really only like to use it for this step, and sometimes I only use my Kiara Sky bit, which I will put in here. So here's the lifting I was telling you about. See that little peekaboo spot that's right there on the right side of her nail, her left side, but right there where I'm working, you'll notice that I don't want to generate heat, so I don't stay in that spot constantly. I do move around and come back to it. But right there, there is like a moon-shaped spot underneath that where I can see the acrylic will be coming up. So I need to work away at that without damaging her natural nail, without causing any heat. But I need to get that all off, and hopefully you guys can see what I'm talking about and how much I'm talking about and how I can tell when I'm done. Basically, you can see that the acrylic is or is not flush to the natural nail. Here's the Kiara Sky bit that I was telling you about. You can do all your prep with this bit and not use a sanding band at all. But when I'm doing a backfill, which is what I usually do, but when I'm doing a backfill, I do like to use a sanding band because it's a little bit more heavy duty. Whereas this is more delicate, but does finer work. I just went over this with the sanding band, but do you see how much more I'm getting off with this bit? Because I can really get in there. It's sharp and it just does the trick. This is a ball bit from Profiles Backstage. What I'm doing with this is strictly buffing out any skin that, just skin around the nail. So none of this doesn't go on the nail plate at all. Okay, and so here I'm going to be prepping her natural nail and putting tips on. So I'm not going to use the sanding band on these because, like I mentioned, I really only use a sanding band when I'm doing a backfill and I'm working on acrylic. I like to do all of my prep with this bit and a cuticle pusher. It does the trick. It does the all the cuticle areas you can see, and it also scratches the surface. Every single time I'm doing one of these recordings, I cannot think of the word that I'm looking for, but you know, you want to take the shine. There you go. Take the shine off the nail. This does the trick for that. And I don't know, this bit I think is only like $15. Stays sharp for a long time. So I'm going to use some Young Nails glue. I'm pretty sure I had used some swipe on her right before this and I didn't show it, but I do show it next. So I'm going to use some Young Nails glue, those not polished tips you saw, which are long coffin straight tips. Excellent tips. They're narrow enough to, when you cut them to the length your client wants, you're not left with such a square nail that you have to really file them back down to a coffin, if you know what I mean. That is so annoying. Because most people aren't, honestly, most clients do not leave their nails full length. So unless you're working on a practice set, you're always going to have to file your coffin nail. Right here, I'm just comparing them to the nails she already has on to make sure I'm getting the length correct. I do a small bit of shaping on these that I didn't show. And here I'm going to take some swipe. I did show this full view just so you can get an idea of like the area I'm working in. You can see on that ring finger how much acrylic I had to take off, and you can see where it's really flush, especially when I go in with this primer. You'll be able to see it a little more up close. That's a Kiara Sky acrylic primer. And here I'm going to show you the acrylics I'm going to be using. Red Lotus from Not Polish and the Kiara Sky Clear. If you guys didn't see my video where I did the experiment with clears, and I'm just going to show you some glitters and foils I'm going to be using in hearts. Go check out that video because you will be shocked at the results of the clear test I did. And I am still recording part 2 of that video. The reason that's not up yet is because I had to do this one and my phone only has so much space, which is also why I could only show you guys like 4 fingers, 1 hand, because my phone was running out of space. It literally stopped in the middle of my filing, but I did get a pretty cohesive full amount for you guys. Also, I wanted to mention, please, let's talk about this. If you noticed on her natural nail, those 3 that are gone, when I was doing that prep, you should be noticing when your clients come back, besides that little bruise she had toward where I glued the tip, her natural nail should look pretty pristine underneath a set when you take it down, or when nails are off like hers did. If you were doing too much prep, there's going to be like literally an indentation in her nail that looks kind of like a moon shape, and it can either be a colored, like a gray bruised looking area And I'm saying that because by the time you see it a few weeks later, when your client comes back, that is the color it is. It's called Ring of Fire because when it initially happens, it does look red and bruised like that little bruised area she had on her tip. But obviously that was way down at the tip where she broke her nail. So that's not what I'm talking about. But that is the color. The reason the phrase Ring of Fire comes because it is that reddish color, but it's way up higher, like basically where this acrylic starts on this nail. That's where you'll see a ring of fire because that's where you did prep last and that's where the outgrowth is. So if you're seeing a client with nails, so they come in and you either do a soak off or they don't have nails on, or there's a case like this where she has a couple missing and you're looking at your client's natural nail health, you should not see any of those markings. If you do, you are going in too hard on your prep. So another thing I wanted to mention is when I'm working with that sanding band and when I'm working with that barrel bit from Kara Sky that I was just showing you on my prep, I, again, am at speed of 3,000 or 4,000 and I'm using absolutely no pressure. It's very, very, very light feathering. It looks like heavier pressure because the video is sped up. I really, really made that error on myself when I first started watching nail videos and prepping my own nails. My nails are super duper thin, so I literally just can't do prep. I have to be feather, feather, feather light, which actually ended up helping me with clients because I know how easily you can damage the natural nail. So please be careful with that. Please don't think that you can be rough with that step. It's a very light touch that you need to be using. So as you guys can see, I'm going in with very dry beads. Whenever you're working with a highly pigmented acrylic like red or black, first of all, just use not polish. I've mentioned this before. When they have sales that are 20 to 30% off, like just they had a New Year's sale, 25% off. I got every single acrylic I bought for $15 instead of $20. So just wait for them to have a sale. Write down the colored acrylics you think you want to buy from them so you can, bam, do it all at once. And whenever you spend more than $150, shipping is free. So, and you can pay with Klarna. So there's just no reason to buy subpar products, in my opinion. Just get all of your acrylics from Not Polish. Bam. I mean, that's it. Except for you should probably get Kara Sky for clear after that little experiment I did. Unfortunately, I hope Not Polish can change that because I don't want to use any other product. I don't want to go to the Kara Sky website and just get those prep bits and clear, but I do because I like it and their primer as well. But if Not Polish had a prep bit that was in stock that was like that, and if Not Polish had a clear that didn't yellow, I would just use their Triple X sponge and I wouldn't have to use anything from Kara Sky. Anyway, that's a whole nother game. What I was getting at is when you're working, wow, I can really go off. Let me stop for this plane. Okay, so I'm sorry I'm all over in this voiceover, but I am trying to get things done that I need to get done today, but I need this video up because I need to finish the other video I was working on. I need my phone space, and I know you guys want to see this. So when you're working with a highly pigmented acrylic, like red or black, first of all, like I mentioned, just use Not Polish. Just do it. I do have definitely some other colors, like I did a video on Kara Sky colored acrylics. Awful. It's just a hot mess working with them. They run. The marbling is horrific. Just really difficult. And using a good product like this just makes it so much easier. But when you're working with a highly pigmented color, you want to make sure if you get any on the skin, so you need to be careful and not be slopping your monomer all over their skin, all over their cuticle area, because the monomer is going to be stained. You're going to stain their skin and it'll come off after a day or two, but especially if you're doing pictures right after. So it helps to kind of do that if you need to, how I did with my fingernails. If you're comfortable doing that with your client, this is my daughter, so I just use my thumbs to kind of take it off. But if you are close and controlled with your application, you have a good acrylic that you can work with well, you won't be slopping it all over the edges. So that's number one. Number two is work dry. For me, that works better because I don't have something that's running everywhere. Here I noticed a little shaping, a little dip in the nail, which I always have a dip in that area, it seems like, after I'm done applying. So I had to add more. But when you first start using a really pigmented color like this, red or black, you'll notice right away, as soon as you dip your brush into the acrylic, that it's more powdery. It's literally a different texture. You're going to notice that you need to use more or less monomer, or if you use the same amount of monomer, your bead will come out much drier. So basically, if you work with it that way, it's so much more malleable. I mean, you can see that this acrylic is just doing whatever I want it to. It's not going anywhere I don't put it. It's staying exactly where I put it, but it's letting me move it. So that is the consistency you want. And even though when I'm getting it on there, it looks very chalky and very dry, you can tell as soon as I start patting it and maneuvering it, it creams right up, just like butter, just like they say. So you see that's not moving. As soon as I start adding a little monomer, it gets completely workable. And cuticle beads, if you could see, I did not place that on the cuticle. I placed it below it. As soon as that bead starts melting, I would say, it will land where you want it. So if you can just visualize patting that bead, that will help you know where to place it. Also, I learned the hard way. When you're doing acrylic, you're 85% of the time not swiping that product down. You're patting. So in the beginning, first of all, my beads were way too wet, and I was taking most of the acrylic back off of the nail. And secondly, I thought I would put a bead down and then start dragging and pulling and wiping it down, which would also wipe it off. So I finally learned, after I learned to work much drier than I was. See how I got that off of her skin immediately? Because I don't want it to dry, because then it's going to stain. So if you get a little bit on there, just get your brush wet and get it off. Anyway, I realized that I shouldn't be pulling any down until A, I'm ready to cap the free edge, or B, I'm doing an ombre, or C, I'm ready to pull it down. So most of your application should be patting. Like you see this right here. I'm going to pat that into place, and the acrylic will slowly melt into the areas you want it. Now see how high? I don't even have to put my brush near her cuticle. If you notice that, my brush hardly ever goes up there except to maybe melt it a little more in that area so that it really seals in. But if you just pat, that's the name of the game. Small, dry beads and pat. When you're patting it, you're patting monomer into it. So it's much more malleable because it's only getting as much monomer as you want it to get where you want it to be. If that makes sense? And you can kind of see that with this bead. It stayed where I wanted it, but when I put some monomer around the edges of the parts I wanted to pull down, it let me, and it stayed there. So I am capping in clear, going over just the hearts so I don't file them off. And you can tell when this set is done that this was definitely crystal clear. I used the Kiara Sky, as you see, and I did a geode nail on her middle and thumbs, and they were crystal clear. So also I'm using not polished monomer. So in the experiment, I used Kiara Sky Clear and Kiara Sky monomer. So here I am pairing Kiara Sky Clear with not polished monomer, and I achieved the same super, super clear result. So it seems as if the Kiara Sky will stay clear if you use other premium brand monomers. I'll try it with Young Nails in the second part of my experiment video that hopefully I'm going to get to today. This is the last finger of application I showed you guys because, again, I was running out of space, but I do show you each nail design. So on her other hand is the same exact design as I showed here, and on her thumb is this design here. So there isn't anything that I did that you guys didn't see how I did. These foils, I prefer working with these little foil flakes that are kind of sticky. I don't know if you guys have ever bought these. Profiles Backstage has them. They're And then you can just get these like on Amazon. Pretty sure I got this on Amazon. No, I got this from Nails by Dev, sorry. They're already cut really small and they're sticky. So I'm just tapping and picking this up with a wet brush, the foil anyway. And then I put a bead of clear on, and then I just start pushing the glitter into that clear so that it stays where I'm putting it. And then I'm gonna cap the whole thing. It's really easy to do this kind of nail as long as you keep the area clear, the area you're going to be putting the glitter in. Also, if you notice, that nail looked very strangely shaped as I started it, because you want to build your apex and shape that you need up there with your color. So, and then you're going to build out the rest of your nail with clear here, but your apex and cuticle area needs to be that red color in this case, if that makes sense. I mentioned before, I don't like building my nails with clear, I like building them with colored acrylic. If you can think about right now, if I had put a thin layer of red in that cuticle and apex area, how strange would it have looked for me to build a hump right there with clear? From the side, you would literally be able to see a thick layer of clear instead of red where the apex should be. So I never figure out how nail techs who use clear to shape their nails do that without making it look weird from the side. Maybe they just don't show the side view, but when I've done it with my own nails, it looks ridiculous. So I do all of my shape with my colored acrylics, but I'm a colored acrylic freak, in case you haven't noticed. I just like working with that. So after this, I am going to show you guys some finish filing. I'm going to be using a Not Polish 100 grit zebra file, which are amazing. Those are beastly. They do the job immediately. And then I have a Tammy Taylor peel and stick with a 100 grit on one side and a 180 grit on the other. And this is the pinky I was telling you about that didn't need very much work. I just crisped up the sides and moved on to the next nail, because I am going to take my Not Polish medium barrel bit and go over the surface of all the nails. So I know I'm going to take out any scratches or anomalies off the top and seal my cuticle. So that's why I didn't go in hard with that, because that was one solid color, so that was not capped in clear. So I didn't need to blend any of the clear beads that I put on top of the red. It was just a straight red nail. And I think on the other pinky, I was able to do the same thing. My shape was there. I just crisped the sides and used the barrel bit for the rest. So I'm going to get off here. I'm going to stop talking and let you guys watch. After this, the only thing I do is the filing, of course, and then I use Not Polish Gloss It, which I did not show, but that is the top coat I use, Not Polish Gloss It. And then I use Young Nail Rose Cuticle Oil. And at the end of this video, you will see the TikTok I posted of the final product. If you guys have any questions, please leave them below. I'm not putting the products in the description box because I have shown and listed all of them here. But if you have any questions about anything, please just comment. I always answer. And if you have anybody that hasn't subscribed yet, tell your friends. You guys were less than 40 away from the giveaway. And it's going to be a good giveaway, and I want all you guys to have a chance at it. So let's get to 200 subscribers, please. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all of you. I love doing this. And I just think it's cool that you would even listen to me blab, because, you know, squirrel. I know I go all over the place. But like, subscribe, share, and thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys next time. I will post part 2 of my experiment as soon as I can. Love you guys. Bye.